Hi, welcome. Hold on a second. Okay, so Haley and I were just laughing and talking, and I didn't regroup well enough before I started this. Um, Hello, and welcome to Real Life and Real Love. I am Sarah Michelle, and I am a sex, love, and intimacy coach. I coach women, men, and couples. So today we're going to be talking about first dates. If you saw our stuff last week, we were talking about what to wear on a first date. And we thought a good thing to talk about this week would be what to talk about, what subjects to avoid. We don't have any, maybe by the end you'll be able to take some notes on different questions or something, but we don't have anything prepared that's like, ask this specific question sort of thing.
Mhm.
I personally don't, it's not that I don't like that advice. It's just that I feel like if you're already someone who's nervous and not sure what to say on a first date, and then you go and you find these questions, you try to memorize them, and then you're trying to remember them on the date. And I think it just adds to the anxiety. So instead, Haley and I are just going to have an open conversation today about dates that we've had, about things that we think you should talk about, things that you should probably avoid. And then just with all that kind of context, we want you to be able to walk into your next first date confident in feeling like you can just, I want to say ad lib. That's not the word. Like, what do you do when you're acting and you just do it off the cuff? Like be able to just walk in and figure it out naturally in the conversation so that it feels good to you.
Yeah.
Anyway, I am Sarah Michelle, and this is Haley. You want to share a little bit about yourself first?
Yeah. I'm a style coach. I live in Australia. I live in Brisbane, Queensland, Australia, and I'm from New Zealand. So, as it's been pointed out, I have a different accent, and I don't actually have an accent that's from around here. And if I go back to New Zealand, I don't have an accent from there. So, I'm like in between both worlds. So I am a style coach. I do a online virtual business for styling, which we've mentioned in previous episodes, where we'll just do a video call, and it means that it's not as invasive. Sometimes you don't really want somebody to come into your house, but you want things to be fixed and looked at and stuff. And so I only see what the camera lens sees, which gives you a lot of privacy, and it gives you a lot of options to go through, like your drawers, your closet space, and that type of thing. Or virtual shopping, like we talk about outfits, piece things together, plan wardrobes, understand basic essentials and investment pieces, and all of those key foundational pieces that help you. My honest belief is style work is healing work. Like, if you work with a stylist and you don't know how to recreate that look, that person didn't help you. That person just gave you like a mission, and then it's over. And I think, like, we live in these bodies, and there's so much power with what we wear and what we don't wear in some cases. And I think, why not use that? Like, why not have as much fun as you can? Why not understand what colors work for you? And you never, like, once you know that, you never have to think about it again. You know that shade of pink works and you love it. Metallic works for you in this way, or the way the accessories, and you literally do that for the rest of your life. You can upgrade and change, and you'll add pieces in, but it won't be like this stressful thing where, like, in the morning, like, you don't even know what to wear. It'll be like, ooh, what do I want to wear? And how much fun can I have? And shopping will not be a tedious, horrible, like, oh my gosh, I've got to go to this event and I need something with long sleeves. And it's never ever going to be that way again. Once you've worked with a really good stylist or a style coach, like, all of my clients have, all to this day, even if we've only done like one hour session, get so much out of it, because it's inner work. Like, what we do on these chats that we have on this show, it's talking about those inner pieces, those emotional connecting content, the stuff that matters in real life, as well as achieving some goals. So it's like a combination of life accomplishment and goals, and making it work long term.
Yeah. Okay. And I can attest to that, like I have on past episodes, because I have worked with Haley. So today we are going to talk about first dates. They bring up so much anxiety for so many men and women. And honestly, you can feed off of your date's energy too. As I say that, I'm thinking, like, yeah, when you show up to a date and the man is confident and he's ready to go, it puts you at ease. But when you show up and I showed up to a date once and he was very kind, don't get me wrong, but he admitted at the end of the date that it was his first date after deciding on divorce, and he's not actually even fully divorced or anything yet. So he was like, I felt so bad because he didn't know what I did, and I thought, God, you really threw yourself to the sharks here because your first date back on the market after being married for years, and you're like going on a date with a dating coach. I didn't tell him. We did go our separate ways, but he was nervous the whole time. And he even said something at the end, and that's how I found out that he hadn't dated yet, is he's like, I haven't been on any dates and stuff. I don't know how this goes, but is it okay if I give you a kiss? And I was like, I didn't say no. I mean, I said no, but I know that sometimes we get put in these awkward situations, right? And we don't know what to say because we're like, oh, he's a nice guy. I don't want to hurt his feelings. So I just like made a little joke about it. And I said, I've never had a kiss on a first date. But I said it in a way that was like kind of pulling away, you know, not like, I've never had a kiss on the first date. That sounds fun, you know? It's like,
Yeah.
I've never had a kiss on the first date. And he's like, okay, I got it, you know, and then said it was nice to have the date and whatever. But anyway, so their energy will impact it as well, and their ability to speak and their confidence and everything will impact it. But we want you to walk away from today's call feeling confident in showing up and talking no matter who you're running into, because as I'm sure you can attest to, Haley, like some dates just suck. They're not like, I mean, they're a waste. I want to say they're a waste of time. Maybe they're not. They can always be a learning experience, but there's some people you're like, I can't wait to get out of here.
Yeah.
Which is something I think we're going to talk about next week, is like where to go on first dates and how to protect your time and your energy and stuff like that, so that you have like easy outs when things aren't working.
Yeah.
So we'll follow up with that, but go ahead.
Well, going on first dates, it's so much pressure, especially if you're fresh out of a relationship, you don't know where you stand, you're not ready to communicate with that person about that information. And you're extremely right, you know, and we've talked about past episodes how the masculine, if you're in your feminine or wanting to step into your feminine, or, you know, if you've been in like a relationship that's not been ideal for you and your, I want to say heart, I guess it is your heart, but so like your health and your mental space, and you don't like one straight out of the gate, you actually have habits from that past relationship that you may not realize by default you may do with this person, and this person may not get it. So there are like a few conscious things to bring into it, and then there may be like, you know, you can ask those questions that are like, what do you do? What time of the day do you get up? Do you like the beach? I tend to, like, I have a sort of structure of what I want to accomplish. And that is, yes, those pieces are important, but I actually want to know so much about the substance of that person. Because goals may come and go, jobs may come and go. What they actually do, unless it's like slaughtering animals or something, which is something actually, okay. So I was introduced to a guy, and he was an electrician. He had his own electrical business. It was commercial. So it was through like a friend that I actually went to high school with that moved over to Australia. And she found out that I was single, and we were chatting, and she's like, I'm going to set you up with my boss. And I was like, oh, I don't know. And she's like, no, I think you guys are going to get along and you'll have a good conversation because you've worked in electrical too. And like we did, and we had some really good conversations, and he was like, oh my God, you could actually work in my business. You would be such an asset. So everything was fine until he talked about the types of places that were his main commercial customers, which are abattoirs, which is where they slaughter animals. And I was like, oh, and he's like, is that a problem? I was like, can we just move on for now? It wasn't the deal breaker, but it's something that I've actually thought about multiple times since, and thought, I don't know how I would stomach that. Like, I'm not vegan or vegetarian, even though I get asked that a lot based on my what is it, like the word when it's the way you conduct yourself, like, because I care about I started life on a farm in New Zealand, and I was around a lot of animals. I grew up in a really small town. Like, the population was like under 2,000 until I was like 12. I lived there, and like, I'm not like, I don't even have any animals at my house at the moment. And I haven't for many years, based on, I live in an apartment, so it's just not ideal. I just think, oh, these poor things would be like looking out into the wild, like I could be out there. But anyway, I digress. I have this thing where it's like there's a part of me that just struggles with that. And I think it's because I saw the behind the scenes, and when this guy brought this up and he saw my face, and I was like, well, it could change. But it's something that, so it's not his job, which is the point of my ramble. It's not his job that was the problem. He saw me as a potential asset, like as a potential future, queen and partner that would actually be able to help his business go from where it is into the next level, just based on like even me complaining about past problems. But there are things inside a date that I will often, like the substance of that person, I want to know, like, even when I say, about future goals, I'm not super hung up on the answer. I want to see the way that they respond to my question. And I
Yeah.
feel that's kind of like, what we find important, right? Like, these are the things that I've recommended to people in the past. And this is how I, as a coach, function. Like, it's not always necessarily the topic with a client. Or in any life situation, it's often how they react. Like, if you've got children, it's not always the words that they use, it's often their reaction. And I think a lot of parents will know that we know that with the children don't have the languaging necessarily. Like, they're like, the thing, they don't even know what to call it or how to describe the situation that happened. But you pick up a lot based on like their posture, or, the way that they're facing, like their body language type of thing, their tone. As a person delivers a whole sentence, they can be like jittery, they can move around, they can like, I play with my hair a lot, and I find that that's like a good thing. Like, if I'm like driving along and I'm like, la la la, I'm like, I don't know why, but it's like my happy thing. And there's a similar type of thing when you're talking with men on a date, and it's like, if you're stuck and you don't know what to say, think back to that primal part of them. Just don't stress too much about the words, and don't stress too much about what you're asking them. Because remember, this is back to being a feeling. The relationship is based on emotions and feelings at the beginning, especially because that's how you get the vibes or not. And if you're stuck, nervous, don't know where to go, don't know what to ask them, you can ask them general questions and don't get too hung up on the answers. You can say, hey, I am a nervous wreck right now. I'm really tired, blah, blah, blah. And you can talk to them. And at the end of the day, say, do you know what? I've even forgotten like your middle name, but this is what I do remember about you. Like, you can make this a communication piece with that person. Even if you never plan to see them again, you can still show them like love and respect.
Yeah, so for me, like, I never want it to feel like an interview, and I hate when it feels like an interview from them because they're just asking question after question. And I think that's what I think it's a misconception that people have, that we should show up and ask questions. You absolutely can, but I personally feel like there should be a mixture of questions and just like statements, just you sharing, because it takes the pressure off the other person to like constantly be asking questions, and it takes that interview style feeling out of it. And like you said, I totally agree with, to me, it's not as much about asking these certain questions so that I know something about that person. It's just getting them talking enough that I can feel their energy, so that I can see who they are and pick up on that personality, because that's what I want to know. Because there's going to be, if there's a second date and a third date and eventually it goes into something, right? There's going to be plenty of time to get to know each other. And also, something I always think about is, and this comes from Brene Brown, and she talks about how that person needs to earn the right to know your story.
Yeah.
And so sometimes we get on these first dates and we feel like we have to answer questions because they're asking it, but you actually don't. And if you can sidestep it in kind of a flirty way, then like anything you're uncomfortable answering anyway, if you can sidestep it in a flirty way, then it adds to that mysteriousness and it creates this kind of play between the two of you. If he's like, oh, okay, so she's got a few boundaries here. Let's
Yeah.
see what we can do, that sort of thing. So you can be playful about it. The way I like to do it is show up, take a look at I almost always eat on a first date. I suppose if you're not eating on your first date, this won't work. But take a look at the menu and start a conversation around the menu, because usually that will kick something off that leads into another conversation, leads into them saying something about blah, blah, whatever, and you can kind of get going from there. A lot of people these days have special diets and exercise and all this sort of stuff, so you can kind of get them to start opening up about their lifestyle there. And honestly, I'm looking for, like, if the man's like, oh, well, I only eat this way and stuff like that, whatever, like, that's no bueno for me, because I love to cook. I love to eat. I don't have all of these diet restrictions, and I don't want to be in a long-term relationship with someone who's like, no dairy, no whatever, unless it's like truly an allergy and they're like, no, I'm totally used to the people around me doing what they need to do and I accommodate for myself. You know what I mean? So I open up with those conversations and get going, but I feel like it takes the pressure off if you're just honest. So like you said, if you hit a lull in the conversation, you're kind of like, I don't know what to say next. Literally say something kind of silly about like, well, this is awkward. I have no idea what to ask you next. Or, well, this is awkward. We're just sitting here in silence. And then it lightens the mood.
They love it because they can sense it. And what you were saying before about, I forgot the bit. It's basically, I think, and I think you'd come across as like, men want to present a certain image. And if we're not looking at those surface like questions, we can ask them, we can listen to them, but we're looking for like who they are as a person, their responses, their body language, you know, those typical advices like how they treat the waiter and stuff like that, like listening to the words, but really looking at the deeper mechanism of who that person is and looking at like their habits and stuff like that. Because there's like the rounded out piece of it is like, even if you only go on 5 more dates with this person, like whatever this becomes or doesn't become, you may have 5 more times you hang out with that person, and you're hanging out with the essence and the energy of who that person is. All the other stuff can be changed. A hairstyle can be changed, like a diet can be changed if they're flexible, like all of that type of thing. And I know that I can say that about the diet because my daughter's anaphylactic to nuts and eggs and a few other things. And a diet is a big thing. And like on top of the fact that I get a bit funny about animals, a diet is a really big thing because anybody who's going
on the other side of it,
yeah, they're going to end up in a relationship with me. We don't have eggs and nuts in the house. And if they are a fitness fanatic and they do have a lot of those protein orientated things, it can actually become a problem, which it did in the past with a person that I did date. Because, you know, you've got to find out the essence of that person, what they respect and what they don't respect, or what they're flexible on, what they're not flexible on. And when you're doing that, you're figuring out you too. You can be like, oh, weird. People always think I'm a vegan. What is it that I say? Like, there are things that you get to discover about yourself when you like listen to this information or feedback. Like, I'm a confident person just in general because I don't know, I'll just wear clothes and just go about my thing and I know who I am. But on a first date, I am a wreck. And I got to the point where I just say that to the person, like, because they take it on board that they think that it's something they're doing. And I was like, you're fine. I'm just a nervous person, like on a first date. And it is like, because I've done it, that it's not like it's on me or it's that person. I just am. And it just takes a while to like, you know, kick the nerves or do the thing. So if I tell them, it gives them an opportunity to one, not be offended, not be questioning all these things, not get really funny and weird and put up their defenses. Because if they put up their defenses, then I put up my defenses, and I'm like, this person feels gross to be around. It starts like, but if you're honest and they already picked up on that, because they did, like we've talked about in the past, like men are actually sensitive to these environments that they're in, and they are sensitive to our emotions, even though they don't even know necessarily half the time. And when you verbalize something, they're like, yeah. And they already knew. They just don't have like the same verbal acknowledgement and capacity that we do. And if you say that often, it changes everything. They're just like, oh, I thought it was me. And I'm like, no, you're dressed really well. This is a really good scene. I know I picked this place and I'm happy with my outfit. Like, everything's good. I'm just being a mess. And, you can talk about at that point what makes you a mess. Like, it's so much pressure, like getting a babysitter, or you're nervous it's going to be like the last relationship, which, people recommend not to talk about. But what if this is your reality? Like, as a 30-something-year-old, that you're not coming to this as a pure white sheet. Like, literally, you are not a blank space, a blank canvas. You're a whole person with a whole life and a whole history. You've had emotions, you've had experiences, you've probably been married, you may have been through divorce, you've got children, you've got like a plate full. It's not a small plate either. Like, I remember a girlfriend that I used to know back in Perth in Western Australia. She was talking about her husband, and this is to the plate analogy. She's like, oh, he's always telling me his plate's full. She's like, I think he's got a really small plate. And don't say that to him. I think it's going to get fit. But I always think about it like that. I always think about, when talks about their stuff, and we have to acknowledge, I think, when we come to this and we come to our first date, that we have a lot on our plate, and our plate is normally really big, especially as women. We have got a lot on our plate. And if we were talking about plates more, we're looking at what's on that guy's plate. Like, literally, how much has he got in his life? What's going on? Is there space? Do we communicate?
Do you feel like doing that on a first date?
It's the feeling out of it, I think. Like, for me, I need to know if this person is worth me getting a babysitter in the future. Because I've just gone on dates where they wasted my time, which is why I've sort of come up with a couple of things about, like, it's not the words necessarily that they're saying. It's those feeling spaces, because then it means that if they're after just one thing, if you're paying attention, they can say it like that. The word fails me, starts with C. But if they're like saying all the right things, and they're like pushing you in the direction of like getting into bed with you, and if you like, you went into it as like a fairy tale and you weren't worried about the underlying feelings and consequences of that, you don't end up with what you wanted, because you were like, oh yeah, he's fully taking care of me, and he's doing this and he's doing that, and we're gonna hang out again. He sells you the sausage, but really he's just going to deliver the sizzle. Maybe not even smoke.
Okay. That's definitely a different perspective than I usually take, because I usually try to keep it like as, I want to say, like, as lighthearted. And it's not just because
you can, but for my circumstances, because I'm a solo mum, I need to know if this person is wasting my time. I mean, you can sort of find out before the date, and it's no pressure on them, because I tell them. I'm like, if I ask you a question that makes you feel uncomfortable, you can tell me. Like, if we are to be successful, we need to be able to communicate stuff. And I don't have time for people who waste my time anymore. Like, I'm not 23. Like, I think about, and there are things that you could say this is really bad, but at the same point in time, no one hates that. They actually appreciate that. Like, you know what you want. I was like, I need to know what I want. They know I'm not going to mess them around. Absolutely, without a doubt. And they like it. They're like, okay, so you've said what you want. And it gives them that they can have the conversation. They can say, it's almost like how a guy would judge you whether you've got children or not. like based on what he wants and what he doesn't. He's like, okay, I'm not ready to date somebody with a child. I'm not ready to date somebody who's looking for a relationship, is, you know, the simplest way of putting it. And like dates can be fun, but you know, I'm not 23, I'm not 28, I'm not fluffing around like that. Like if I've gone to the effort of, it's a few $100s for me to go out on a date, essentially, because it's going to be at least $100 for a babysitter. I'm probably going to go buy a new dress. Like it's going to be time. I don't expect them to pay for my date necessarily, so I take a budget with me for what I'm prepared to spend, just like a normal allocation of going out. I don't necessarily end up spending it, but I'm going to put aside the time and the budget, because if this is what it is, this is what it is. I don't expect somebody to look after me on a date. I'm a fully grown woman, so I'm going to take, you know, the right budget with me, the right finances, and make sure I can be there, because essentially they're probably going to ask me somewhere nice, which is like for a date day. But obviously we talked the other day about first dates that were like coffee dates, which is different, right? During the day.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think maybe that's it. Maybe because I was thinking about that. I was thinking more of the first date. And so I guess if I had a client like you that was saying this is really important to me because I don't have the extra time or extra income or whatever to do this, then that would be the sort of thing we'd be talking more about. Okay, how can we pre-screen through text, phone calls, video messaging? And also, when we do that first date, how can we do that in a half hour to an hour? How can
Yeah.
we do like a meet and greet sort of thing that's just like, because you're right in this, or like I've had the same sort of issue where I had someone I was talking to. I talked to him for like 2 weeks and we were totally flirting back and forth. I was expecting something totally different. I showed up and I was just immediately like, whoa, this is a no. But I was already there. So I sat down and started having the conversation. And as he started talking to me and he eventually started sharing about his family, my sister had dated his younger brother in high school. And I was like, that was the nope. I know the family. I know him. No way. Not a chance in hell. And his younger brother was actually friends with my ex-husband. I was like, this is a hard pass. So, but I know what you mean. Like sometimes even through the pre-screening process, you don't know until you show up and you see them and you, like really, really get to feel their energy. So
Yeah.
keeping those first dates to more of a coffee date, like you said, like, can I squeeze this in on my way home from work? Or can I squeeze this in on a lunch break or anything like that where it wouldn't require the babysitter? I honestly I can't think of a client I've had that said anything about babysitting. I mean, I've had people who had to line up babysitters, but I've never heard them bring it up as a challenge. And I know you know, but people listening probably don't know. I have my kids 50% of the time. So my whole thing is I just schedule when I don't have my kids, right? So I'm not paying for a babysitter until we're serious enough. And honestly, I'm fortunate enough, which is not true for everyone, but I'm fortunate enough to have family in the area. So I've never actually left my children with a babysitter. They've always been with a family member if I'm not with them. So that's not like that's a privilege that a lot of other people don't have.
Well, a babysitter for me, because I mean, I've got no family here, and I like if I am gonna, so I can't always make it on a coffee date with a guy. It doesn't necessarily work, especially like that guy in electrical. He literally lives 50 minutes away from here, like nearly an hour away. So we had to go on like an evening date, and he wanted to. He wanted to get dressed up. He's like, "You seem like the type of woman who would," and I was like, "I would." Let's go. So you know, it's circumstances, and babysitters, I don't often do babysitting. It's only a few times a year, but that person is part of my family, like not a family member, but that person, like my current babysitter, she's on my social media. She texts, she wants to know how my daughter's doing. Like I've always treated, from when my daughter was like 2.5, I think I got a babysitter. I've always interviewed babysitters. I treat them as an extension of my family. And like previous one, a babysitter that I had was a younger girl. It was like a work colleague's daughter. She babysat me on and off for like 3 or 4 years. We're on social media, we're friends. I've seen her out. Like, she's younger, but she was part of my family, and these people care. And this is like, that for me, they are me while I'm not around. I need that person to be an extension of my family. I think also because of my situation, I want my daughter to, in my mind, sidestep, be a part of like the understanding of where people fall in line and understanding who's authority when I'm not around, and those types of delegations and situations. And I want her to have different experiences because we are unique, because we don't have this abundance of family like right here. So sometimes the babysitter is a factor when I'm going out at night. Like, I don't just have people I can call on, because a lot of my friends are either busy or have kids themselves, and you can't just be like, take mine too.
Uh-huh.
And I know a lot of people don't have that. They don't have that same situation. So I'm straight up honest with the potential date, that the pressure that puts me under. And then, I get to see how they react. Like, that's part of the screening. If they freak out about that, this is one of those conversations where there's not a specific sentence that you can say to a person, but it's sort of like talking about your circumstances in a way that's honest, but not too brutal or harsh, so they can kind of gauge and you can see their sort of response to it. Like, no one has ever gone, well, I don't want to date you because you have no family around, or you've got, like, they don't, like, the decision that I've seen made is whether they want to date somebody who has children to somebody else, like that, which is a normal, not personal to my circumstances. After that, because my life, the way I run it, and I'm organized, like, we just set up dates in a way where, like, my daughter might go and have a sleepover with somebody or something like that, because she's older now. So there are ways that you don't have to pay for a babysitter. But yeah, it's the juggle's real.
Yeah. So that adds a lot of extra pressure to your first dates then. And that's going to be felt by you and him, that I'm not normally dealing with, because I just, like, I literally just want to show up and have a conversation. I just want to be in the moment. I don't really care about their future plans or anything, because the only thing I'm caring about is interacting with them and figuring out their energy. And I figure I have plenty of time to ask all those questions later. And I personally think those questions are great for if you have a texting back and forth quite a bit and stuff like that as you're getting to know each other, because it's awesome to be able to send a question and then just when they have time respond and start to get to know each other slowly. That way it gives you more time to think about things and process things and whatever. That's a personal preference.
Yeah.
I do want to talk about, though, you mentioned earlier something that some coaches say not to talk about. And we have been talking about, like, how to get a conversation going and what to do and how to be playful about it. But one of the things I'm kind of on that other team that you said you aren't on, which is not talking about your previous relationships. I do not have a hard and fast rule about this, and I don't want my clients to have a hard and fast rule about this. But I am mindful of, like, not showing up and airing all my dirty laundry.
Absolutely.
I'm mindful of, like, not disparaging past partners and stuff like that. And also, I have seen other coaches talk about, which is what really opened my eyes to it, was there are a lot of people out there who are manipulative, whether it's intentional or not. And if you show up and you say, well, these are all the things the last guy did wrong, then this guy now knows, oh, I just have to do this much to be good enough for her. Yeah. Instead of you kind of keeping it to yourself and then really getting to witness, who is this guy? What will he do for me out of his own generosity, out of his own personality? So I do think there's some truth to that. And I do feel like early on when I came out of my marriage and I was dating, I made that mistake of oversharing on, because it's totally common, right? Like a lot of people, a lot of men will show up to a date and ask you, so
Yeah,
how long have you been single, or how long have you been divorced, and things like that. It's like, whoa,
yeah,
kind of none of your business. I
yeah.
mean, really, like on a first date, it's like, don't. I actually just had a guy do this to me um, in March, so not long ago at all. And he asked me how long I'd been divorced. And if I felt like, I can't remember the words he used, basically, like if I felt like I was through it yet or if it was still messy. And I was like really put off by the question. And I finally said, that I had been divorced for 3 years, and that I had like a good handle on things and I felt confident in dating and whatever, but I didn't like totally answer his question. I just kind of sidestepped it and said what I wanted to say. Well, come to find out, because I have a friend that loves to do that, like background check and all that sort of stuff.
We all had that. We had that friend.
We all have that friend, and thank God for her, because I can't do that. But anyway, this guy has been going through a divorce for 3 years, because in our court system, at least locally, you can see everything that one lawyer has requested from another. Like, so if they ask for documents or whatever, you can't see the actual document, but you can see the petition for the documents from the other party and stuff. So you can like literally go in and see every back and forth between the lawyers, as well as yeah, as well as like any time that they've been to court or arbitration over
Wow.
this. So this guy was just projecting his shit right onto me because he was in the middle of a long and messy divorce, which ended the whole potential between us, because I was like, yeah, no, this is not happening.
Yeah.
But you do have to be like kind of cautious, I guess, is what I'm saying about talking about those previous relationships. But also, like, you can be open. So if you're really in your feminine on this date, you're in touch with your heart, you're in touch with your intuition, and you can tell what their energy is, and like, are they genuinely asking because they want to get to know you better? um and just keeping in mind some boundaries, because you don't know this person very well yet, and you don't know, like, if this person knows so and so who knows so and then all of a sudden it's going to be getting back to the wrong person that you were out here talking about them on this date. Like, you have to protect yourself too.
Yeah. And about the thing that you mentioned before, like when you sort of say these things that my ex did, and then he goes, okay, great, I won't do those things. I remember a long time ago, I heard this thing and it was like, men like to measure things, and they do. And I laugh so hard, especially with work colleagues and people that I've talked to. They measure everything. So what they're doing is measuring themselves against that person in that situation.
Uh-huh.
Always men like to measure. But the other thing was, if you, and this is not a dig at men at all, we love men. If you say to a man, I like white lilies, they are my favorite, he will go, okay, the benchmark is white lilies, and he'll buy you white lilies. You may love other flowers. Like, I love white flowers, but I have learned and I've tested this theory. Say that. That's the high benchmark. But if you open it up just a little bit more and not say, this is my hard and fast, you allow that person the possibility to go over and above and past that. So if you set that as the measuring benchmark, because they measure things, like it's just their default, this is what they do, that's where they go to. And so if you say, all right, these things, and this is what I'm looking for, and if that person is, they may genuinely just want to go out and be a people pleaser and codependent person and just want to just accomplish the things you've set out. They may want to manipulate the situation and go out and just go, okay, these are the things I need to do to get her into bed. Because some men will do like 5 dates to do that. They'll do whatever it takes. They like the challenge. And sometimes you don't know. But if you do it in such a way where when you talk about it and you respond, or give examples, or how do you say this, like make talk about the things that you like flowers. If you do it in such a way where you're not setting the benchmark, but you're allowing that person to go over and above. You can give examples, you can give circumstances. Like I could say, because men like to buy me flowers because I love flowers. It definitely introduces me.
Flowers too.
Getting vases like with the flowers. So I've talked about that in the past, like how so good. Like I've got flowers delivered to work that come literally in a vase that I get to use and use again, and I get to remember that person. And it's a good feeling and it's a good memory. But I didn't necessarily talk about the bunch of flowers. There are ways that you could talk about different things without making be like a hard and fast, because they will only go for those white lilies if that's what you want, like as a benchmark. But you can,
well, they're task oriented, and that masculine energy, they're accomplishing something. So basically what you've done is told them what they need to accomplish, and they're like, okay, check mark, I can do that, and so then there's no creativity to it.
yeah. And if if they're in their life in a phase that's different to yours, they're gonna just want to go out and go, okay, well, that's what I need to do in order to win her. But what we don't want to be won. We aren't a prize, we aren't an object, and that's a whole other objectification theory conversation. But we want, if you're on a date, to get into a relationship, you want to know the essence of that person, and that's why it's important to listen to the emotions and the feelings behind it. So talking about like past relationships and stuff, and it's like gauging how this is coming up, the words that they're using, their response, what does this feel like. A long time ago, it makes me think of a guy. We didn't go on a date. We met through online dating and we talked a bit, and I just asked a few questions like pre-qualifying. And he had 5 children to 4 different women, and I was like, joking, but I think I crushed him a bit. I was like, so you're going to need to keep 5 women happy? He was like, what? And I was like, well, you've got 4 exes and you're wanting to date and get to another relationship. Obviously, I want to be kept happy if I'm going to be the current one. And you need to look after these. He was a dedicated father, which is how it came up as a conversation straight out of the gate. Like he wasn't hiding it, but he wasn't prepared for my question. I was like, that's a lot of women to keep happy. I was like, I'm not against a challenge, but this sounds like a lot of effort and energy. And he was like, wow. Yeah, I'm going to think about that. Like he hadn't ever had anybody look at it like that or say it in a way where he was like, wow, you are dead right. 5 women. Like, because he would drop this and he would go pick up this person, and he had arrangements for the children, and he would work around work schedules and do all the things. He wasn't doing anything wrong. People do get into circumstances, especially some men, somehow they're just like, oh, hell, don't know.
There's something in the air today. We are usually not laughing this hard. Okay, go ahead.
Because it's true. Because first dates are like this, or potential first dates. But, these are I don't have, there was no pre-qualifying specific question in that. But because what I was going for was the feels and, getting to know this person and thinking about the things that, this potential relationship would be. And I'm not hard to keep happy, but I definitely want to be kept happy. I would like flowers. I like surprises. I like certain things, which is something else we could probably talk about as well that I think is a faux pas. People talk about the 5 love languages, and you may agree or disagree with me. I've taken those tests multiple times, and I know the reasons why my primary love languages come up, and the gifts one of the 5 never comes out, but I absolutely know that's one of my languages. So there are no hard and fast rules. You can do an online quiz, but at least you spend time, which is what both you advocate for, is a real person, a real coach to help you know. You can't just ask these 5 questions on a date, or these are your love languages, go out and reproduce it, or you can't necessarily even read a book about codependency and understand it fully. Working with another human being is how you and I have made the most progress, and how we understand you. And you get to like say something to somebody else before you say it in front of somebody where it really matters, right? This is like how girlfriends work. But sometimes we don't want to take this mess to our girlfriends, and we want somebody who fully knows what they're doing. You know, working with a stylist, you're going to somebody who understands fabric, like garment construction, understands the industry, understands all the things that go into the outfit you're wearing. They're not just a person who's like, girl, let's go shopping. You know, it's actually way more than that. And that's the same with a sex, love, and intimacy coach. Like, they understand, like, there is academic stuff behind it. They understand a lot of what other people offer. Like, a coach short runs a lot of stuff for you, and you're in an environment where you get to test run things, you get to explore emotions. And then it's I always think about this back to like a sports coach, and how much, you know, a sports coach will drill into you till you're almost going to die. Then you have to play the game. And then you're like, oh, this is nothing. Because you got support. Like, your coach pushed you to the edge that you didn't know you could go to. And that's what working with a coach is. That's what working with a personal, like, consultancy. That's what working with a personal service is. And what, you know, what we offer as coaches to people is that expertise and understanding. The freebie that you downloaded to get the 5 questions to ask on a first date, or, you know, the 5 love languages, or, oh gosh, what are other things, like 5 things to wear on a date, which that irks me. I know we talked about it last week, but we didn't say, hey, wear a crisp white shirt and some black jeans or what have you to give this impression. Because do you know what? That may actually not suit your body type. And if you put that on, it doesn't do you a service, and it definitely doesn't do the visual man standing in front of you any service either. I'm not saying it's for him, but who you show up as in your clothes is what is actually style. Like, people forget that style. Yeah, you can do clothes and stuff. And it's the same with dating and relationships. Yeah, you can read this book or know these love languages, but it's like who you show up as is actually the primary piece of it. Or at least that's what we think. It's been one of those days.
That's okay. That's okay. I feel good about this. Let me check my notes though and see what I had that I wanted to say. Okay, I think the only thing that we didn't touch on yet is, like, as you're naturally progressing with the conversation, to be either asking questions or just paying attention for stories about family, memories from childhood, and future plans, dreams, and ambitions. Again, I don't think that this is something that has to be like interview style questions and then you're trying to figure out, did they answer it right or wrong? But I think that those are big themes in people's lives that it's really important to kind of pay attention. Like, do they bring up their children and talk about them?
Mm-hmm.
When they bring up their mother or their father or their siblings, or even their friends and stuff, how do they bring them up? Are they bringing them up in a way that is respectful? Are they bringing them up in a positive manner? Like, I have these people in my life and they are supportive of me and stuff like that. It gives you an insight into their relationships. Now, everybody has different people that they're like, they just don't click with or whatever. But pay attention, especially because, like, the way he talks about his mother is likely to be the way he talks about you. The way he talks about his ex is likely to be the way he talks about you, either when you're not around or after you guys break up, if you don't stay together. You know what I mean? So, like, it's important to just kind of, it's more than really feeling into the energy. I guess it's like listening to what's being said, but paying attention to, like I said, what memories does he bring up from childhood? Does he say different things? About, and is there anything relatable? Does it sound like you guys have a similar enough past? Because I personally don't think in relationships you want an opposite attracts sort of thing. I think that that can be really fun in the beginning and it can create a lot of polarity, which can create a lot of sexual energy and tension between you. But I think in the long run, you want someone that has a good foundation similar enough to you. And then you have some differences that help keep that polarity. But I
Yeah.
don't think you really want someone that's completely opposite of you.
Yeah. And realizing that if you're a woman listening to this, the man you're likely to go on a date with hasn't. He hasn't done the same amount of work. I remember watching, I don't know if it was a Matthew Hussey or something. Like somebody was like in like a seminar, put their hand up and they were like, why do we women have to do this work and men just get the benefit? And the response, I don't like remember the exact response, but I remember thinking, well, it was basically like, well, you're here and he's not, and getting upset about this makes zero sense. And you can't get mad at people because they're not doing the same thing as you or, meeting the same life goals.
Some sort of energy.
Yeah, realizing that he's not going to be looking into the stuff as deep as you because he looks into different things. He does different stuff completely.
Well, and just looking at it from like a polarity perspective of masculine and feminine, the masculine is 3D, like earth energy, like it's here, it's present, and I'm looking for a word right now. The feminine energy is in the spirituality and in the love and in that connection to the divine. And so that desire for growth and development and stuff is in that feminine side. So the more masculine of a man you're bringing in, it doesn't mean he can't have that part to him, right? Because we all have masculine and feminine energy within us, but it makes sense that he's going to be coming across as more earthbound. I don't know how to say what I'm thinking.
Absolutely.
But
yeah. You never really know what somebody's going to say. I love goals. I'm all about the future. I do ask goals questions around. And I had a person who had been 20 years in their job. They had 2 children. They were divorced. They have goals. But I asked him about his future. So he lived a couple of hours away from me. So I asked, and he didn't have future goals. And I thought about everything we talked up, and like it was weeks worth. It wasn't a first date. And I thought to myself, that's because he hasn't looked at it the way I have. He hasn't done, like he does, but I've done so much work on this. I've read books, done goals, had coaches, done a bunch of things. So I have the answer. And this is like what we need to let ourselves, 1, off the hook about it. Like, and 2, he may not have, and this is why it's important to not have like a primary set of questions that you go to a date with and like, go for the feels, go for how is the situation and like the overall thing. And you don't have to judge it on the first date if you don't want to, but like go for like what is the essence of going on. Like he didn't have the perfect answer because he hasn't looked at it the way I have. And I was like, you don't have, at first I was like, oh, you don't have goals. Like, the first part of me was like total bitch response. And you actually do, but he's not looking at it the same way I am. Like his answer, because he's so focused on what he's doing, his primary goal was to advance his career, earn a greater income, like expand in that regard, so he could keep putting his kids through school and show up and be a dad. That was all his primary focus was, like looking at that. And the way he responded based on everything up until that point, I was so like, oh, of course he's not going to come out as the same as me. But he does have his goals. He just doesn't have it set up in a response, like a questionnaire, like I would. He doesn't have a journal like me. I saw a thing yesterday, I was going to a men even journal. He doesn't have like stacks of notebooks. He hasn't been in the self-development industry since 2011 when he first bought his first like set of $220 set of DVDs from, can't remember his name. Like he didn't do that. So he hasn't been, reading the books, doing the stuff, doing the time, focus on goals. He's not done a course on goals, but he has some. So letting guys off the hook about having the perfect answer, but like resonating with who they are as a person and realizing they're not doing the work you are. And it's not a dig at them at all. It just means you have different ideas or different focus points. And women like to know stuff. And we need to be okay with that. We need to be okay that we tell a girlfriend a million things. Or, you know, we have the girlfriend who's the super spy. I was sitting in the car driving. I'd been to a beach day. It's like a couple of hours away from my house with my girlfriend, my daughter. We're driving along, and I was telling her about this guy. Didn't even think about it because I didn't realize she was that girl. And she whips out. She's like, "What's his surname?" I'm driving. No idea what's going on. She's like, "Oh, yeah, he's got an Instagram." I was like, "What?" Oh, she's on my phone. I was like, "Oh my God, I'm trying to drive. What is going on?" Like, we have those girlfriends who do that. And that's okay. But men may not. And I think it's important to realize that we're not the same and they're not going to give us the perfect answer. But that's why I think it's important to, you know, advocate why it's good to have a coach if you need support on this. Like if you really want relationships to work in the future and they haven't in the past, getting a coach is as smart as having a coach, sports coach when you're an athlete. They help you get the goal that you want. Don't go to a coach and be like, "Okay, I want this man. Let's do it." You're going to fail because it's not about that. It's actually about you being the best version of you.
Yes, I agree with that. I actually think that's the perfect way to end this. It's about you being the best version of you, because it's true. Just showing up to that date open-minded, having the conversations, remembering that it's okay to just initiate and not ask a question, to just share about yourself. You know, and like I said at the very beginning, if nothing else, talk about the menu or talk about the aesthetics of the place you're in and just kind of get something moving. Perfectly fine. And just enjoy yourself. Allow it to be a process that unfolds on its own and not this thing that has to be, I'm asking you these questions, because when you come in with like these specific questions and you're waiting for an answer to be a certain way, it's like you're looking for reasons to disqualify this person instead of looking for ways to connect with this person and experience who they are, you know, and that energy can be felt. And the feminine energy that this man is looking for is that open and magnetic energy. So when you can show up and you're just present in the moment, available and ready to explore and contemplate, you're naturally in your feminine energy, which is going to radiate and be magnetic.
Yes, absolutely.
All right. Well, thank you for joining us on this episode. Let us know what you're thinking in the comments below. Share any first dates you'd love for us to know about. And be sure to like the video and subscribe so you can get future episodes. I was about to say that really weird. We release one. We release a new one every Friday at 3 p.m. Central Standard Time, which would be same as Chicago. And that ends up being what in Brisbane?
6 a.m. Saturday morning.
6 a.m. Yeah. So in case you want to be up at 6 a.m. on Saturday morning, this is when you'll get your new episode. All right. Thanks for joining us this week.